So we have this episode of the golden calf in chapter 32. Now, for anyone who is conversant with the rest of the Bible, this reminds us of another passage that comes up later in the book of Kings. And this is after the death of King Solomon. We're told that Jeroboam, who had been in charge of the forced labor and had led a revolt against Solomon and had to go down to Egypt and all sorts of resonance of the Exodus there. And when he comes back, he leads a secession and breaks off the northern kingdom from the kingdom of Judah. And in the course of that, he sets up two sanctuaries, two temples, one in Dan, way up on the Lebanese border, and one in Bethel, which was just a stone's throw from Jerusalem, you might say.
That's right.
So at the two ends to nail the thing down. But then we are told that he set up two calves of gold and said to the people, "You've been going up to Jerusalem long enough. Here are your gods, O Israel." Now, the Hebrew word there, Elohim, can be really either singular or plural.
Yeah.
But if you're setting up two calves, I suppose it's reasonable to take it in the plural.
Especially as the verse goes on, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, and the verb to bring out there is in the plural.
In the plural.
So
well,
certainly,
it grammatically agrees.
The context certainly suggests the plural there. The way this resonates, of course, with the golden calf story is this is exact words that Aaron says to the people when he makes the golden calf at the foot of Sinai, right? "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt."
Now, if we press the question, which of these is likely to have come first? If you're reading the Bible in sequence, well, Aaron did this back in the time of Exodus. Jeroboam should have known better.
Right.
But in all probability, one suspects that it's quite the reverse, and that Jeroboam did this, and this is being read back into the Exodus story to condemn Jeroboam.
Right. I mean, to say that Jeroboam's calves are equivalent to the first great Israelite sin, right? That first moment where they really messed up, which, to be fair, Jeroboam, this is his first moment, right? He's just started. I mean, you see what he's trying to do. Jeroboam has a people who have been used to, over a couple of generations, going to Jerusalem to sacrifice at that one central sanctuary where the ark is. And so he says, right, enough with that. Why should Jerusalem get all the pilgrims? My people should be sacrificing in my kingdom. And he builds these two calves.
Now, is that so bad to set up calves?
It depends who you ask.
Yes.
I mean,
in the Decalogue, they say, "You shall not have strange gods before me, and you shall not make for yourself a graven image." Were these images of the God, do you think?
I think these are images of Yahweh. I think that's the part that most people, that has been most misunderstood about the story, is that this is not a story of idolatry proper, where the people are worshiping a different God. Right. They say, these are the gods who brought you out of Egypt. They're not confused about who that was.
So how do you take the plural? Is it Yahweh and somebody else, or are they both Yahweh?
They're both Yahweh, and we know actually that in ancient Israel and elsewhere in the Near East, the idea of local manifestations of a deity is a regular thing. We have inscriptions that talk about the Yahweh of Samaria, the Yahweh of Teman. And I think it's perfectly reasonable for Jeroboam to at least have said, "These are your gods," right? Now, this is your God, and this is your God, and they're both Yahweh.
But how would it have been shocking to people to have an image? And is the image supposed to be the God? Now, in Mesopotamia, you have the care and feeding of the images, as if the image were the God. Even there, though, surely they didn't think the image actually was the God.
I'm not going to speak to what Mesopotamians thought. I do think, no, I don't think they thought it was the God. I think God, what God says is don't make any images of me. Right? That's not the same thing as don't make any me. right? I think it's fair to say this is representative, but that is the law. And actually what's, I think, crucial to recognize is if we recognize that the calves are images of Yahweh, then the people's sin is not their violation of the first of the Ten Commandments. The first of the Ten Commandments says, you will have no other gods beside me. Well, this isn't that. This is the same God.
Yeah,
What they're violating is not the first of the Ten Commandments. It's the first law of the covenant code. The very first words of the laws at the end of Exodus 20, which say, right, you saw that when I spoke to you, you didn't see anything. Therefore, make no image of me. Right, so that's the law that they're violating here.
Now, in the temple in Jerusalem, without getting into speculating as to whether there was a cult image there, it's quite openly admitted that you had the cherubim.
Yeah.
Now, these were some kind of images, and then they refer to Yahweh as the one who is enthroned above the cherubim.
That's right.
Now, one of my teachers in graduate school used to maintain that perhaps Yahweh was standing on the bull or enthroned above the bull.
It's possible. It's certainly possible that it was something like a throne or a base for an imagined but invisible deity. Certainly, that's the case of what's going on in the temple, right? Where it says explicitly, as you say, right, the cherubs, right, which are lions with wings, not babies with wings. The cherubs are God sits on them. So it's certainly possible that the calf is sort of a base. At the same time, in Canaanite religion, the calf was the paradigmatic image of the god Baal.
It's the bull Ale.
The bull is Ale, and the calf is Baal. And as much as the Bible tries to distance Yahweh and Israel's God from Ale and Baal, we know from plenty of places and examples that, in fact, right, we had a lot of syncretism, right, of the ideas of the various gods get mushed together, and they're very much more fluid than we would think otherwise.
Yeah.
A bull representing Yahweh is not, or a calf is not surprising in that
But
sense.
all Jeroboam was trying to do, in any case, presumably, is to make the presence of the God available to the people.
I think it's a purely economic move.
And but even theologically, I think in any cult, you have to have some way where people can feel that they're coming in contact with the God, maybe not necessarily touch it, but have a way to focus the attention.
It's the bulls in Dan and Bethel, and it's the ark in Jerusalem.
And how early do you think this commandment not to make a likeness of the God would have taken hold?
It's hard to know. We don't have it, in part because of where the Bible comes from, right? Who wrote it, right? The people who wrote it were particularly literate, elite, a very small subset of the population. We don't have too much examples of images of the deity referred to, of the deity proper referred to, in any positive sense. Right? The aniconic tradition is actually relatively consistent and strong, I think, in the biblical text itself. That said, outside of the world, the restricted world of the authors of the Bible, it was nothing but icons all the time.
And of course, there were all sorts of laws that you have that don't seem to have had any effect on the lives of the people.
Archaeology has well demonstrated that the sort of aniconic tradition of you will have no image of the deity, reached about as far as the end of the scroll.